Hello friends, and welcome to a very bookish video. Today we're going to go ahead and dive deep in every single book I've read so far this year. Every single book being not too many, thankfully. I don't want to bore you, but I think some very interesting books. So some good books, some bad books, some DNFs, of course. And I thought we would just kind of have fun with this video. A little bit more of, hey, maybe some recommendations for you, maybe some stay clears. And I do want to say one thing. I love reading. I get the chance to read on my lunch break, while I'm on the bus, while I'm on the train. I get a lot of time to read. Also in the evenings, so don't ever compare yourself to another reader. I'm also a slow reader. I take my time while reading a book. Sometimes it takes me way longer to read something than I was expecting, but that's not a bad thing. We're all on our own in our reading levels, and whatever you read is good. Even if it's just one book, even if it's just a magazine, even if it's a newspaper article. I think no matter what you're reading, it's always good. So don't ever compare yourself to another reader. I have seen some readers already reading like 50 books in 1 month. I'm nowhere close to that, and I'm happy with my reading level. This year, I've actually not read as much as last year because I'm working on some other projects. But no matter, I think it's still fun to talk about the books we're reading, especially if you're trying to find the one that you want to really read at this time of year, which is May. So with that being said, let's go ahead and dive deep. I figured I would go ahead and start with the first book I'm reading and then end with the last book. I have to turn it like this so my volume doesn't go away. The last book I'm reading, which is so far Knitted, and by Anne Bartlett. I've seen another YouTuber doing this and I thought it was so cute that I would try it out. So I hope that's okay with you guys. My volume might change there, hin and her is what I wanted to say. My volume might change a little bit just because I'm moving around the book, but I thought it was a cute little way to be like, hey, it's a bookish video. Let's go ahead and put my microphone on a book. So I'm sure you want to get started. I'm sure you're excited to see what we have. I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 books to talk about today. So not too many, but enough to be able to keep you busy for a little while and relax. So make sure you grab yourself a cup of coffee, cup of tea, cup of orange juice, or whatever makes your heart happy. And let's go ahead and jump right in for our first book. We're going to go ahead and start off our talk with the first book I read, which was ending of 2024 in December and going into January of 2025. That's The Secret History by Donna Tartt. This one is going to be definitely recognizable by many of you. I picked this one up based on based on my partner's recommendation. He's still a friend too. And also lots of other recommendations from Bookstagram, Instagram, Trends, Facebook, everywhere. Everywhere was going and recommending this book. And I wanted to read it and kind of figure out why it was so popular and so absurdly everywhere, and I figured it was because of the dark academia stuff. And to be honest, dark academia is a very interesting trend, a very interesting genre of books. I think they're always fascinating, especially if you stay away from like the fantasy side or any of those sides and stick with the real world dark academia feels. And that's exactly what this book was bringing. It was real world things. We follow a young man named Henry who is in a situation at home and trying to kind of leave it behind. And he's interested in kind of connecting to another group of people. And his group of people that he decides he's going to connect with, he's going to be obsessed with, is a group of children who were chosen to be very in tune and diving deep into classics and understanding the deeper philosophical questions of the world, which we all enjoy kind of questioning in general. But we have a group of teenagers. Don't forget, these are young adults, teenagers who are having these conversations, and they end up getting themselves kind of trapped into this dark and intense thinking. And it is one of those books where you're going to be thinking, what in the world is going on at all times? I did enjoy this one. It's not exactly my cup of tea, but mostly because I'm definitely one who gets frustrated at characters who don't just speak their mind and just kind of let the world kind of run around behind them. I'm definitely a person that loves a character-driven story, but my character better be a strong character. And Henry just drove me nuts. So If Henry drove you nuts as well, let me know in the comments below, because I'm curious if I'm the only one. And I'm sure I'm not, hopefully. But I definitely enjoyed this book in different ways. I read it on the train and it was definitely a perfect atmosphere, especially during the winter. I loved kind of that cold feeling that you had at all times. You had different aspects of the story of love, hate, passion, obsession. You had so many different things happening in the story that it definitely was interesting and a definitely captivating story. However, I do think there's some other Dark Academia books I'm wanting to read. These, I'm going to list them right here, so you can also check them out if you want. These books I've not read before, but I'm still quite interested in reading more Dark Academia, especially since I'm looking for more Dark Academia that's not related to fantasy or sci-fi. I want like real world Dark Academia and questions of the world and philosophical questions of life. So I definitely enjoyed it. It's not my favorite book, but I still liked it, and I'm still going to probably read it again in the future just to make sure I understood what was happening, because there were times in this story where I was just like, what? So I definitely need to reread. The next book I ended up picking up was a book part of my challenge that I'm doing in 2025. I unwrap a book that's part of my TBR. If you're interested in those videos, I'll put them in the description below. It'll explain it down below. But my first challenge book of the year was How to Stop Time by Matt Haig. I've read another novel by Matt Haig, which was The Midnight Library. I really loved that novel. I thought it was very gripping and very touching. And when I picked up How to Stop Time, I was hoping to get the same thing. To be honest, it wasn't exactly the same thing. I still enjoyed the story, but I felt like the ending was missing a little bit. If you want to hear my whole review, like I said, I'll go ahead and put it in the comments below or in the description below. And you can check it out there, because I don't want to go too far into it because I've already talked a lot about this novel. But for the most part, I enjoyed it. I think it's definitely very touching. It's very introspective, especially if you're kind of questioning what's the point of life? What's the point of everything? What's the point of reading a book? Not really, but it's the idea of finding the joys in life and really kind of going forward and staying in tune with those joys. It's a lot about other things too, but that's the biggest thing I got out of the story. And I think that's one of the reasons why I didn't love it as much as The Midnight Library, is because I felt like the story fell short at the end and felt rushed. But I still enjoyed it. I still would recommend it, especially if you do like other novels from Matt Haig. I think it's a different type of novel, not his best novel, but still a good one to read. And yeah, and I don't regret picking it up, even though I didn't necessarily choose to pick this one up. But I still enjoyed it, still like it, still recommend it. The next one I decided to read before the winter was over was The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Audrin. This was also a book I've seen recommended multiple times on the booktubes, the YouTubes, and all the other tubes. And I was happy I picked this one up. It was definitely atmospherical. I loved Vasya as a character. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And I thought she was a very strong character to have in here. Loved the atmosphere, like I mentioned. I loved the folk tales. I believe that the Russian folk tales were very well represented. I thought it was really fascinating. It made me want to look more into Russian folk tales and understand those a little bit more. I didn't fall in love completely. If you're noticing a trend, I haven't loved a book yet so far out of these three. But I still enjoy all of them. But this one, I thought the middle was probably the best part. The ending was a lot about like love and kind of like that princess and the prince meet together and they fall in love, which are stories I enjoy reading. But sometimes when I want a strong character, I want them to be strong. I want them to be motivated and doing things because they want to. And our character did. Our character was that way. I think Vesya was a very strong woman. And I don't want to say strong woman because like men can be strong, women can be strong, but in the sense of a character who is going to go out of her way and push for what she believes in and push and fight for her right to be an individual, just be an individual woman living in a world where it was still probably very hard living in a world to be on her own, to be independent. And I loved different parts of the story. I loved that part of her character where she was independent and deciding her own choices and fighting for her beliefs, and I think that was done very well. And I loved the ideas of the evil stepmother type situation, but we are taking a different route, and the prince doesn't save her, but we still have this male character in the background that's still this kind of like damsel in distress savior kind of guy. I get it. I guess we needed it, but yeah, I guess that's kind of where I fell away from it, but I still enjoyed it. So don't get me wrong. I loved the atmosphere in this story. I loved the cold feeling you got while reading it, and I think it was very captivating in that way. I understood the story. I understood where it was trying to take me. I understood what it was trying to do. I just didn't love every part about it. And that's completely okay. We're not going to love every part of a book, but we can still enjoy them. And I enjoyed this one. The next one I read, I loved parts of this as well. And no, I didn't just love parts of all the books I've read so far this year. Don't worry. There are some really excellent ones, but I'm going to say the first three were just mediocre so far. The next one was The Goodbye Cat by Hiro Arakawa. They wrote The Traveling Cat Chronicles, which is one of my favorite books. I love The Traveling Cat Chronicles. I'll recommend it over and over and over again. And The Goodbye Cat is kind of like a prequel to The Traveling Cat Chronicles, but I believe it was released after The Traveling Cat Chronicles. And it's not necessarily a prequel because it's not the full story. This is actually a collection of short stories, which I love a collection of short stories. And these are a collection of short stories about cats, which is even better. And there are some really, truly amazing short stories in here. I have probably like 4 or 5 that I truly, truly did love. There's maybe 1 or 2 that I didn't get into, but that's perfectly okay. You have a collection of short stories, and to be 10 out of 10 for each story is like, it's difficult. So I really loved the first story that was in here. It was about a cat who was trying to leave their footprint as a signature. I'm not going to give too much away about any of the short stories because I would love for you to pick this one up. It's probably my favorite book I had read so far in the year when I picked this one up, and there's just so much. If you're a cat lover, if you're a pet lover, you're going to love this so much. And the last story that's in here is the prequel to The Traveling Cat Chronicles. It's kind of like the starting story of The Traveling Cat Chronicles. And so I really enjoyed kind of like that, reading that after I had read The Traveling Cat Chronicles. I'm going to say it over and over again, just to make sure you know to read The Traveling Cat Chronicles. So, but I was kind of happy I read this after that because it kind of put a new perspective on some of the stories, and it made me realize how much Hiro Arakawa loves cats. And I mean, it's completely understandable. I love my Indy and Ola are my 2 best lovable friends. Sorry for any of my friends out there, but yeah, the cats come first. So I completely understand where this author's coming from. And you get that a lot in Japanese authors and Japanese books is the love and care and respect for cats. And so when I pick up books like this, it's just one of those things that pull my heart in. And that's probably one of the reasons why I love it so much, is because I'm connecting emotionally and I'm connecting my own thoughts and my own feelings to this, and it makes it so much better. So there is a collection, I believe, of 6 different stories, and like I had mentioned, I really loved a couple of them, and there were a few that just didn't hit as hard, but that's completely okay. I mean, it's a collection of short stories, like I mentioned. So if you enjoy a collection of short stories and you also enjoy kind of like some of those Japanese texts like Before the Coffee Gets Cold and the other novels as well, here's a list of a few of them and maybe a couple that I have not read as well. I'll go ahead and mark the ones I have not read but are interested in reading. And if you like those novels, you'll definitely like this one. And if you like short stories, I just recommend picking it up as well. The next one I actually picked up because it was part of my last year, 2024's reading challenge, where I was reading 12 books that were released in 2024. Oops. And that was, come on, light. And that was Tay Albright's The Morning Side. I think this was one of my first books I had read where I was kind of reading a lot slower because the story was not as engaging for me. I really liked the atmosphere the story created. I think it was really beautiful and destructive. but I didn't feel so engaged with the story itself. And there were times where I felt confused and lost, and I couldn't dive as deep or connect with the characters as much. But so I can tell you a little bit about this one. We end up following an aunt and her, I think it's actually a mother and her daughter. I can't remember if it's an aunt or her niece or a mother and daughter. I believe it's a mother and daughter. And they end up moving to an island to kind of have a fresh start. And they're kind of in hiding, and they're working at the hotel, and they're on an island that's kind of sinking, but the society of the island is trying to bring more people back to it, even though it's falling apart. It was very kind of confusing in that sense. And I didn't understand the purpose. I think that's what it was wrong for me, is I couldn't understand the purpose of where the story was going. And it ended up being very captivating in the middle. I found the middle very interesting. I found the world building very intriguing and also really atmospheric, like I mentioned. But there were times where I just felt disconnected from the story. And maybe I just wasn't in the right mindset when I was reading it. But for the most part, I think there were just pieces and parts for me that I wish were a little bit clearer. And maybe I just need another reread of it. But for me, I think it's not going to have another reread, unfortunately. This doesn't mean I wouldn't read anything by Tay Albright. I feel like I would pick up another novel of theirs. It's just this one didn't hit it for me. I really love the world building, but the relationship between the girl and some other characters throughout the novel, and also the ending, I just felt like there was parts of it that just weren't clear enough for me. And like I said, the motivations just weren't clear enough for me. So yeah, interesting, intriguing, just not my cup of tea. The next book is kind of a random pickup. It was part of my book bingo from last year that I didn't get done. As you can tell, I've been trying to not necessarily catch up, but just read a couple books that have been on my TBR or on my reading list for a while. And this one was a random book that the booktuber Gavin Reads It All. Gavin, I don't remember the name of his channel, but Gavin had looked at in a library but did not pick up. And the only reason I picked it up was because it's purple. And I had the goal to read a book that was a purple cover. And that's Beneath the World, a Sea by Chris Beckett. This was super weird. I was not expecting this at all when I read this. It is very atmospheric. I have definitely read a lot of atmospheric books this year so far. It was creepy and uncomfortable. We end up following a character who takes a boat to the middle of the earth. And when you go to the middle of the earth, there's other creatures there. And the biggest thing about this is that there is a moment where when you're traveling to the middle of the earth, there's this limbo part of the world, or the travel. And you forget everything that happened in that time. You lose every memory you had. So we follow a character who's keeping a diary of their travels. And when they travel into the middle of the world, they have forgotten this middle part, and they're a little anxious and nervous about reading what their diaries had to say about this middle part. And when they actually go into the middle of the earth, their goal is to kind of start exploring or trying to understand the deaths of these creatures that have the right to live. But these creatures cause people to feel feelings and feel uncomfortable, and this is the rightful home, and humans move to this area. But it's just very interesting because we're trying to discover why our characters' motivations are to, one, not remember what happened in this limbo land, and two, why they're trying to help these creatures and trying to understand the creatures and trying to understand the society and world that's being built here. It's very weird and uncomfortable. It reminded me of H.P. Lovecraft. So if you like H.P. Lovecraft, you could actually really like this. I didn't dislike it. I just wish I understood it better. I definitely want to reread this book again at some point. And I think I would definitely pick up another book from Chris Beckett. I think his writing style is very uncomfortable, but also mysterious, but also fascinating. Like I mentioned, it was very atmospheric. And I actually think this is more atmospheric than The Bear and the Nightingale. This is also very much more adult than The Bear and the Nightingale. And it's just very uncomfortable at times. I was completely engrossed and fascinated by what was happening, but just completely confused as well. So if you're looking for something that's going to be just a little bit weird and off, this might be really fun for you. And it was definitely fun for me, just very confusing. Reminded me a lot of H.P. Lovecraft. So if you like H.P. Lovecraft, like I mentioned, you could actually really love this one too. The next book is also part of my 2025 challenge. So this one is a book I had unwrapped, and that's On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. I had read a couple poems by Ocean Vuong before picking this one up, and I think there are some very fascinating and eye-opening parts in this novel. I don't want to talk too much about it because I also did a review on this one. If you're interested in that, I'll go ahead and put it in the comments below, in the description below. But I felt my eyes were open in certain circumstances in this book. We follow a young boy who has left Vietnam with his mother and grandmother to start a new life in the US. And he is trying to understand who he is and also trying to understand where he belongs in the world, not just as a Vietnamese boy living in the US, but also as a young gay boy and a young gay man living in the US. And it's very heartbreaking at times. It's very raw and full of feeling and full of confusion from our character. And it's just very fascinating. I looked it up because I was curious if this was more of a memoir, and Ocean Vuong said, hey, there are parts of his own life that he put in here, but it's also a separate story about the character he wrote about. So I thought that was really interesting. And I think it was really, really beautiful, especially as an author who's normally known for his poetry, who's switched over to writing a novel. You can definitely tell that this book is written by a poet, just on the way things are written, how pictures are created, not just through direct speech, but also through a lot of similes and metaphors, and building the colors of just how everything feels. I think this is probably one of the books I started tabbing because of the way it was written. I also like to tab the books that are meant for my challenge, and I think it'd be really interesting to read you a quote. So I have a couple tabbed, and I'm just picked one of my random ones, but this one's on page 171. It's in these moments next to you that I envy words for doing what we can never do. How they can tell all of themselves simply by standing still, simply by being. Imagine I could lie down beside you, and my whole body, every cell, radiates a clear, singular meaning, not so much a writer as a word pressed down beside you. I think when you read this story, there are lots of times where you have to kind of just read it slowly and enjoy it. And that's what I was talking about earlier. Some of these books I read a lot slower than I was expecting. And this is one of them. Even though it's short, it took me longer to read because I actually had to slow down and take my time to understand the context and also understand the visualizations that Ocean Vuong was creating. And that was definitely something different for me. And I'm not somebody who reads poetry very often. It's an area where I'm trying to explore more in. But picking up Ocean Vuong, I had realized maybe I'm not understanding all the context and all of the ideas he's expressing because I don't read poetry. And I found that really interesting to kind of explore, is if I read more poetry, would I get more or something different out of this novel? I'm curious. This is something that I asked in my challenge video. If you've read this novel and you've read poetry, was it easy for you? Or if you didn't read poetry, was it more difficult for you? I'm just kind of curious on that one. But for me, I found it as a not a hard read. I don't necessarily see books as hard and untouchable and too difficult to read. I find some books more, I have to take my time to understand them. And this one, I definitely felt like I had to slow down and take my time to understand it. I still really loved it. I would be interested in reading another novel that he would write, but I'm more curious about picking up the poems and trying to understand poetry a little bit more. If you have any tips, I'm always interested in hearing about tips. So that was Ocean Vuong. On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, and I really enjoyed it, but it was definitely a tough read at times too. I have another novel that I randomly picked up at a bookshop, which if you know some of my goals for this year, I'm not supposed to be doing. So I have created a goal for myself this year, so I would not buy as many books. So I have 2 rules about buying books this year, and it's to help me kind of back away from buying too many books or buying too many random books. I'm a random book buyer. I love to buy random books. It helps me pick up some books that I was never expecting to read, kind of like Beneath the World of Sea by Chris Beckett. I would have never read this book, but I'm happy I read it. So I love buying random books, but to help this, I created 2 rules for myself. The first rule was I may buy a book, but only if I have read 2 books off of my TBR. So if I have read 2 books, then I could buy any book I want. Easy rule to follow. The TBR books have to be books that I currently own as well, books that are in my home. The next rule, I can buy a random book if I am out in another country, and I can buy 1 book from each bookstore I visit, but it has to be a book that is from that country. So it has to be from an author from that country. So for example, if I'm in Italy, I can only buy Italian written authors, and only 1 book from each bookstore. Hopefully that made sense. So I had read a couple from my TBR, and I thought, I want to buy a random book. And I want to buy a book that sounds adorable and cute and wonderful. So I bought The Baby Dragon Cafe by A.T. Qureshi. I don't know if I pronounced their name right. This is the first book I DNF'd this year, and I DNF'd it for a very good reason. I thought this book was going to be adorable and wonderful and cute and fantastic. It is about a small little cafe, which I would love to own a cafe in the future. And it's about a lady who is trying to get her cafe off the ground, and she lives in a world where there's dragons. And the dragon riders are able to have dragon eggs and have baby dragons, and baby dragons can come into her cafe. It is out of the ordinary because most cafes and most places and most establishments don't allow baby dragons because baby dragons can't control their flying, their fire breathing, and everything else. So she decides to open a cafe where she allows baby dragons to come in. Super cute, right? I could not read this book. It got so frustrating at times, and I hate talking negatively about books. I am all for, hey, write a book, you're doing great, do what you love, and I will try to read it. And if I don't love it, maybe it's just a me thing, and that's completely okay. We're not meant to love every single book we read. That's the great thing about art, is because art can be chosen and liked by different people. Just because I didn't like Donna Tartt, The Secret History, as a 5-star book, doesn't mean you wouldn't. And that's the great thing about reading. That's the great thing about discussion. That's the great thing about art, is we can discuss, we can explore, we can have open ideas. And that's wonderful. However, this book, I got frustrated with this because it repeated itself over and over and over again. There were no motivations for the characters, and if there were motivations for the characters, they were very slim. And I am very picky about the romance books, the love story books I read. I want a story that has purpose. I hate a book where the characters meet and they're magically in love within the first moment. And everything I get frustrated about books was in this book. I got so frustrated because I felt like there was repeating happening every 2 seconds. Like I wasn't smart enough to put the puzzle pieces together. So I was being told instead of shown. I was being told not just once, but like 8 times. I get it. And hey, this author, maybe just getting practice. And I say go for it, dude. Keep learning, keep writing, keep trying to get more books out there. But please, for the love of goodness, just I don't want to keep seeing books put out there and books not it's hard to say what I'm trying to say. I want effort being put into the books that are being pushed out there. And I know it's hard because now the book industry is turned into this area where it has to be, it's almost like fast fashion, where things have to go, and new books have to be turned out every other week, and people are reading so fast. And I hate that part about Bookstagram and Instagram and Bookstagram and BookTube and TikTok or Book Talk and all of this. We're missing out on some of the most amazing books because books are being pushed out too fast. And all of the amazing books that are being published are being lost in the mess of fast fashion books. And it's just so unfortunate because there truly are so many amazing books being published. I read so many amazing books that were published in 2024, but I also found so many half shaken books. I'm trying to watch my language. But books that there just wasn't enough put into them. And unfortunately, I think The Baby Dragon Cafe was one of them. I feel like this could have been a wonderful, beautiful story. I feel like there could have been, this was a love story I was willing to pick up, but I just wish there was more put into it. I felt like I was reading a YA book, which is perfectly fine. I found some YA novels that I really love, but it had adult content for a YA novel, which I don't appreciate, I don't love, I don't like. If I'm an adult who's reading books that are like On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous, not a YA novel. This is an adult novel about adult subjects, about adult situations. Yes, we follow a young boy who's going into adulthood, but he has gone through some very, very unfortunate things. He's also trying to discover his sexuality and his needs and his wants and his understanding of this world. This is something that is for adult readers. I would not recommend this to a YA reader unless you can understand and dive deep into a very adult subjects. You're talking about adult subjects and also written in a YA form. And I have a big problem with this. And I know this is not why we're here. We're not here to listen to my problems for the publishing industry. But as somebody who has really fallen in love with reading and really appreciating these lost novels that are not well known. And hey, On Earth Briefly Gorgeous, that's a well-known novel. That's not something that's lost and not well known and blah, blah, blah. A lot of these novels are well known. The only one I think is not well known is Beneath the World, a Sea. And that's because I haven't heard it on Book Talk or all those other social medias. So it could be well known in a certain industry, in a certain world, in a certain group of people, but it's not well known in the social media realm. And I want to keep reading books that are not well known in the social media realm. This was made for the social media realm, and that's unfortunate. I hope that this author picks this book back up, rewrites it, republishes it, and makes it so much better, because I really think the story could have been great. It's just missed so many spots. So I DNF'd it. I'm getting rid of it. It's not a book I'm wanting to read. It's not a book I'm willing to push through. It's not a book that I think I want to put my time into. If the author rewrites it, yeah, maybe I would. But right now, I think the idea is fantastic. The execution was just not there. Sorry. If you're interested in hearing my opinion on what social media is doing with the book community and publishing, and also this beautiful way of art and art form, let me know. I can really dive in deep into it. But for now, we're going to continue on with my books that I've read so far. We're about halfway through. The next one was Open Throat by Henry Hoke. If you have not read this, where are you? No, I'm kidding. This one was a book that I found that somebody on BookTube recommended. I picked it up because I thought it sounded so odd. We are reading the perspective from a mountain lion, I believe, who lives in the California hills near Hollywood. He lives near the Hollywood sign. And this book is just from the perspective of the mountain lion. So we have no punctuation. We have very interesting structure of the novel. It is broken into thoughts. So the thoughts are broken into just lines with no punctuation. There's just opinion after visual after opinion. It is so weird and so fascinating, and that's all I want to say about it, because that's the reason I picked it up. I thought it was so odd because The Traveling Cat Chronicles, mentioning it again, is also a book that is from the perspective of the cat. But this one is darker, more raw, and just thoughts from a mountain lion who's living in the Hollywood hills and trying to live their life. So definitely weird and fascinating and a really, really quick read. We're halfway through and I have a couple more books to tell you about. I hope you're having fun. I hope you're entertained. I'm trying my best. Maybe we have a little intermission. You could have paused at any time, so we don't really have to have an intermission. But if you need to use a potty break, this is a great time to press pause and go use the potty. But really, we don't need an intermission because you could literally press pause whenever you want to. That's the great thing about YouTube. You can take a break, you can stop whenever you want. But honestly, there are some good books coming up. And we are now, so you can kind of have a timeline. We're approaching March's challenge book month. So we're now on to March, and we're going to continue on from March, April, and what I've read so far in May. So isn't that exciting? So if you've already pressed pause and you're wanting to continue, fantastic. Let's go ahead and continue. If you like this kind of video, also let me know in the comments below. This is helpful because the more information and engagement I get from you guys, the more I know what to do to know I can continue making the videos that you want to see. I don't know if any of that made sense, but you know what I mean. So we're going to go ahead and continue because I want to not hold you up too long. So we're going to talk about March's book of challenge month. We're going to go ahead and talk about the book that I read for March for my challenge, and that was The Bandit Queen by Perini Schroff. I spoke so much about this book, so I'm not going to go ahead and dive too much into it. Again, the video is going to be in the description below. But this one was really interesting because this is actually where we've jumped into a culture that I don't know very much about, which is the Indian culture. And this is written by a woman who I believe she grew up in the US, but she visited India. So I would be really curious to read more books from India and also in the perspective from somebody who grew up in India. I think it's also very interesting at a very different culture than what I know, which I think is really great. I have one book that's on my to-read list. It's called, it's right here. It's called 400 Days by Chetan Bhagat. Let me grab it. Hold on. I just got this book delivered, so it's one of my next books I'm going to be reading. It was recommended to me by somebody on my YouTube channel, which I really, really appreciate you recommending the novel. And I am looking forward to reading this. I don't know very much about it. I just know it's I believe about a sister who's trying to figure out what happened to her. Oh, my daughter Shira was kidnapped 9 months ago. So that's what this book is about. And I'm fascinated by it. I'm curious about it. It's a kind of a mystery novel, different from what I normally read, but that's completely okay. I'm loving picking up new genres, and I love picking up new books. And so I'm definitely going to be reading this one soon. I have not read it yet. just to let you know. So The Bandit Queens is about a woman who is living in India, and she was accused of killing her husband, who has gone missing. So there's no body parts or anything like that. The husband is just no longer there. She was accused of murdering him. The whole society, her whole area, not city, it's village. So her whole village believes that she's killed him. And it's very mysterious, very goofy, extremely dark humor, super satirical. So if you're looking for something that's extremely dark humor, satirical, and odd, I think you should read this. We deal with a lot of terrible husbands. Not all men are bad, though. Terrible women. Not all women are bad, though. But I think it's definitely worth a read. It's very fascinating. And like I said, if you're interested in hearing my whole kind of discussion about this book, non-spoilers and spoilers, go ahead and check the description, because I definitely dive deep into this one because it is super funky, but definitely a fun read. The next one I'm going to be talking about is one I very much enjoyed, and one that I've had for a very long time. The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry by Rachel Joyce. I had a hard time saying that one. I don't know why. This is very lovely and sweet. We follow a man who's just recently retired, and he goes to mail a letter to a friend who's in hospice. And on his walk to the post office, he decides to walk to the next post office and walk to the next post office. And then at one point he decides he's just going to walk all the way there. And it's not just like a walk around the block. It's from the southern part of the United Kingdom all the way to the very top. And so we have a little map. The map is unhelpful in the sense of I never looked at it, but that's because I'm terrible at looking at my maps. I always forget there's a map and then I just never look at it. But we have a little map. So he walks from the very bottom all the way to the very top. So that's fun. And we follow his journey. We follow the people he meets. We follow his feelings and his thoughts. We get to understand his relationship with his wife, because it's not him just going for a walk and not having anybody connected to him. It's him going for a walk and him leaving his wife behind. We follow their relationship. We follow the news that ends up figuring out who he is and wanting to know who he is. And we follow people who become fascinated with him. And we get the conclusion of the story, which is very eye-opening and very... It makes you think about your own life and your own choices and the reason why we do things. So if you have not noticed, I read a lot of those books. I don't know why. I just fall into those contemporary novels that make you be introspective. But I really love this one, actually. I found it absolutely just breathtaking. And I believe the singer from The Passengers, I can't remember who specifically, I'll put their name up here. He is writing the music for the musical that's coming out, or the play, and I'm really interested in it. And there's a film as well, and I haven't seen the film yet, but I need to watch the film. I really love this book. So if you love a book that's introspective about travel, in the sense of like, not travel, I'm flying somewhere and I'm travel vlogger type situation, but in the sense of wanting to explore somebody's introspective travel, then I think you would really like this one. I really loved it. I thought it was really sweet and really intriguing. The thing is I decided to go on a kick of intriguing and introspective novels, which I don't know if it was a good idea, but I picked up The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. And if you've read anything, or if you've read The Bell Jar, you know how introspective this is. And it is definitely, wow. This follows a young woman who just ends up not just kind of experiencing a different world and living a life that she thought she wanted, but kind of falling into that trap of desperation and feeling lost and feeling unwelcome and feeling like you don't belong. It is definitely heavy, and it is definitely a book that's not for everyone, but I would actually recommend a lot of people to read. It was not what I was expecting. I really enjoyed it, but I also felt by the time I finished it, I was heavy. And I don't know how to explain my thoughts on this book because there's almost not very much happening, but there's also so much happening. We follow just this woman who is just trying to not fall apart in the end. And I thought it was very breathtaking and also very heavy. I don't really know much else to say about it because it was just one of those novels that I was very attached to, but I can't say very much about. It's very odd. But if you like a book that's going to definitely make you think and be introspective, like I said, I read a lot of those books, then I think you might actually really enjoy this. I marked one page in it because I thought this quote in this part of the book was really kind of breathtaking, and I'll read it to you. From the tip of every branch, like a fat purple fig, a wonderful future beckoned and winked. One fig was a husband and a happy home and children, and another fig was a famous poet, and another fig was a brilliant professor, and another fig was E.G., the amazing editor, and another fig was Europe and Africa and South America, and another fig was Constantine and Socrates and Attila, and a pack of other lovers with queer names and offbeat professions. And another fig was an Olympic lady crew champion. And beyond and above these figs were many more figs. I can't quite make out. I saw myself sitting on the crotch of this fig tree, starving to death, just because I couldn't make up my mind which of the figs I would choose. I wanted each and every one of them, but choosing one meant losing all the rest. And as I sat there, unable to decide, the figs began to wrinkle and go black, and one by one they plopped to the ground at my feet. So, as you can imagine, just based on that quote, this book is full of possibility, but also the fear of possibility and the fear of missing out, which I think a lot of us, especially with the world now, with social media and seeing what's happening and seeing the possibilities and seeing what we could be doing and possibly want to do and possibly can't do, I think that's what this book brings out, is that fear and the questioning. So I loved it, and I felt heavy after reading it, but it was a good heavy. So, The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, introspective and heart filled. Yeah. That's all I have to say about that one. I had to take a moment after that one because reading that quote actually brings up a lot of feelings, and I think, for example, being on social media is almost like that fig for me. I love doing YouTube, but there are times when I'm wondering like what else is out there, especially like moving to Germany. That was one of my figs. But now what's next? And I think that's something that a lot of us can feel and a lot of us worry about and also think about. For example, the question of just having children. And I get that question asked. I'm turning 32 in June. Woohoo. And the question of having kids comes up and if I want them. And the question is I don't know. I don't know if I want children. I sometimes think, oh, I definitely don't want children. I love my freedom. I mean, I get to read all of these books. But then there's a part of me, am I missing out? Am I missing something? Or do I continue on with the career I'm in? And do I continue on working in the office? I never saw myself working in an office when I was younger. Or do I work towards opening my bakery and my cafe? How do I get there? What do I do to get there? And I think reading this book definitely brought up a lot of those feelings of, am I missing out or am I making the right choices? And I think that's something that a lot of us deal with. And so if you're willing to kind of dive deep into those feelings and the introspective feelings for yourself, but also with this character, then I really recommend this. But do be warned, it may bring up some feelings if you really dive deep into those introspective feelings as well. So I'm going to move on because you are not here about those thoughts. You are here about the thoughts about the books, which, by the way, another introspective book. I don't know what was wrong with me in the month of March, but I was definitely diving into all of those books that were going to make you think. Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. Oh my gosh. Another book that's going to make you think and question and wonder what the purpose of life is. So be ready. But really, this book was just also very fascinating. We follow a character who, one, was dealing with alcoholism and decided to beat and kick butt and try to fight against that demon that we can call alcoholism. But he also felt like he lost who he was in certain parts, and he was an aspiring poet. And there were times where you were trying to read it and understand him, and he was trying to understand who he was, and he was trying to understand the point of life and the point of things. And then we got to the topic of martyr and what it is to be a martyr. And to be honest, I knew what martyr was, but reading this book, it brought up so many more ideas and so many more perspectives and so many more, what's the point and what am I bringing to this world? Like I said, I read a lot of books that made you think, but this one was just very fascinating because we got a perspective of a character who is not an American, and he is an American. I know that's confusing, but he was brought to the US as a young child and grown to and raised to be as if he is American, but he felt disconnected from his identity. And then he fell into alcoholism, and then he wanted to become a poet, and then he wanted to understand who his identity is, and he wanted to understand where he came from, and he wanted to understand his mother, and he wanted to understand everything, but he felt like he couldn't. And then he felt like he needed to understand who he was, and he couldn't. And that's what this book is about. It's about a man and a boy who's just trying to understand who he is and his point and his love. And it's just fascinating. It was really well done. And it's definitely one of those novels I was not expecting to like. I liked it, but then at the end, I thought, what? So, another book. If you read it, let me know and we can talk about it, because at the end I was like, what? And I'm still understanding. I'm still trying to understand what happened. So I don't want to give away too much, because if you have not read this one, I really highly recommend you pick it up, especially if you like books like The Bell Jar. I think you would actually really like this one. Even Open Throat, I think you would also like this one, because it's another one of those books that's introspective, going to make you think, going to make you question a lot, and it's going to make you wonder, what is it? What's the point? And there's a point, don't worry. You bring a lot of love and joy and meaning to this world. Even if this was one thing that somebody told me about my social media, and they said, even if you bring one thought, one feeling to somebody, your social media is doing something. It doesn't have to affect thousands and hundreds of people, hundreds and thousands of people, millions of people. It just has to bring something to one person. My goal is to bring happiness and joy and provoking thoughts and cozy feelings to people. And if I've done that for one person, then I'm succeeding. And I love that idea, because a lot of us who are on social media, even if you just post pictures on Instagram, or if you post a comment on Threads, you're wondering if that is just lost in the void of thought. But if one person is affected by it in a positive way, if you're posting positive content, I always recommend posting positive content, or if you need help, hey, posting your helpful content or your not plea for help, but your want for help. Or if you're going through a hard time and somebody is also going through a hard time, it's the understanding. I hope you understand what I'm saying. It doesn't always have to be happy, but being there for somebody or being there with somebody, I think is the more important part. And so you're important. I don't want you to forget that, because when you read these books, they're going to bring up a lot of questions. But I think you should always remember you are important and you matter and you're wonderful. So just because we're reading a lot of heavy books does not mean we're not important. It's just we're reading heavy books. And that is the end of my March heaviness, because I don't know what was going on with me in March, but I was reading a lot of heaviness. And I decided to take a break from that. And I picked up a new book, and which was my April book challenge book. And that was Under the Greenwood Tree by Thomas Hardy. Not a book I would normally read. I don't know why I picked this one up at a bookstore in Paris, but I did. And this was done last year, so it was not part of my challenge. But this book was, at the beginning, very confusing, and in the middle, absolutely lovely and funny and weird and goofy and delightful and confusing and great. It's a love story, a love pyramid. Not triangle, because the guys weren't into each other. It was just one girl at the top and three men who loved her and was trying to win her over. That's what the story's about. Very basic, very straight to the point. I'm not going to go too far into it because I've already talked about the book before. And if you want to see my thoughts, you can go ahead and check out the video below. Yeah, but it's absolutely delightful. It's cute. And I needed something cute. Which brings me to my next cute book, which I really absolutely loved and really enjoyed. The House on the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. I love this book, and when I've read so many heavy books, this was the light book that I needed. I needed something light and lovely and cute and wonderful, and this was exactly what I wanted. So we follow a wonderful, wonderful man who is very gray. Just like picture a painting that is very neutral, very beige. And then picture, as the book continues, this artist who's painted this beige man is adding a little bit more color and a little bit more color and the more brightness and more and more and more. So by the time we get to the end, we have a beautiful, bright, multicolored photo full of love and happiness and wonderfulness. That's what this book is about, and that's where I'm going to leave it, because I think it's just full of this wonderful, happy feeling. I really enjoyed it. And I know there's a lot of controversy about T.J. Klune. I am not going to get into that one. I just want to say I liked this book, and I'm looking forward to reading the second one as well. We're almost done. We have 2 books left. So you don't go running away, because the next book is going to be delightful, and it's weird. And that's Butter by Asako Yazuki. I have been wanting to read this book since I saw it last year. So I got it for Christmas, and I finally read it, and I loved it. I absolutely love this book. One, I love butter, girl, or boy, or you, or they, or I love butter. That's the flat. I love butter, and I bake with butter all the time. I cook with butter all the time, and one of the first things you read in this book is about this woman who decides to test out something that another person has told her to do, to cook rice and then put a slab of butter directly on that rice, add a little bit of soy sauce, and right when that butter is halfway melted, not completely melted, but halfway melted, take a bite. And I could feel my saliva just building up in my mouth. I was thinking, oh my God, this book is going to make me hungry all the time. And it did. I was hungry all the time, but I really enjoyed this. I thought it was fascinating. I thought it was intriguing. We have our main character, who is a journalist, who's doing a little bit of a journalistic research on a woman who is accused of murder, but she never laid her hands on the victims. It is very interesting. Our accused murderer, I don't know what you would call her. I don't know what you would call accused murderer. I don't know. The lady is obsessed with food, And our journalist doesn't know much about food, but as she gets more and more in tuned and trying to understand the supposable murderer, she starts testing out the recipes and testing out the food this woman's eaten. And as you read, you get to know more and more food. So if you love food, if you love murder, if you love mystery, if you love contemplating everything, I think you should love this book. I read it very slowly. I thought I would read it faster, but there were times where I was trying to I wanted to be more in tune with the pictures that were being created and also the recipes. I am definitely going to be making this so-called French 4 cake, I believe what it was called. It's a pound cake. Definitely going to be making that. But it just made me so hungry. And I'm literally shaking right now and my belly is growling because I'm thinking about the food in this book. But it's really fun. I really enjoyed this and I thought it was so fascinating and so captivating, and I loved the writing in this, and it's definitely a different Japanese novel I've read before, and I just loved it so much. So if you love butter, if you love food, if you love murder, definitely I would highly recommend picking this one up. We got one more book, you guys. I just finished this one and I cried. I cried so much. This book is split into kind of 4 parts, and it's called Shark Heart, A Love Story by Emily Habeck. I cried so much after the first part. It's a beautiful story about grief and loss, about how we deal with grief and how we grow, and it's about a man who turns slowly into a shark. It's kind of slowly. He turns into a shark over a year. But it's about his relationship with his wife and what that relationship kind of evolves into, and about how she deals with the grief. And I thought it was so well done. I loved the first part. I enjoyed the second part. I did not enjoy the third part. And I think there could have been a better way to kind of structure this novel, but that's my personal opinion. I think that we could have had the first part, and then the third and second part could have switched spots, and the story could have gone into a different direction. It's just slightly, but that's my own personal opinion. I still really enjoyed it. I still really loved it. Also, it's a library book. How fun is that? Support your libraries, you guys. So I really enjoyed this, though. I thought it was really lovely, super wonderful. It ends up following the love story between this man and woman and what the relationship turns into as he's turning into a shark. It was really, really well done and really well written and absolutely fascinating on the writing style. We've kind of followed we follow a few different writing styles. We have kind of this playwright writing style. We have more letter, more perspective. It's very fascinating, very interesting. So I recommend it. I think it's quite delightful and weird and funky and definitely different from what I've read before, and a love story I can fall in love with over and over again. And I cried like a little tiny child who fell on the floor and scraped their knee at the end of part 1. But just because it's absolutely beautiful. Yes. Okay, that's all my books. I'm reading Knitted by Anna Bartlett right now. This is my book of the month for April. So I am enjoying it so far. It is not as deep as I would like it to be. I don't know if you can hear me. But it's not as deep as I would like it to be, but I'm not going to go into it yet because you're going to be getting a video on June 1st of all of my thoughts and feelings about this book. So until June 1st, you guys, I hope you have a lovely day, a wonderful and fantastic weekend. Let me know what your thoughts are on this video, if you liked it, if you're interested in any of the books I read, or if you have any recommendations off the books I've read so far. Really, it's been a random collections and no really direct path of what I'm reading, but I'm always looking for recommendations of new books to read, new genres, new books from different cultures, and all those fun things. So thank you so much for being part of this video. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I'll see you guys on June 1st with this book review and also a delicious raspberry treat. So until then, you guys, have a great day. Ciao!